The Alfred Wichly Show. Episode 1, Fascism Delight. Episode 2, Subprime Loan Shark. Episode 3, Serafima Spigotsky. Episode 4, Fake Cults of the Ambient. Episode 5, The Agented. Episode 6, Alt-Lit Concern Trolls. Epitaph. Writers rubberneck the White House, scantily apprised of its affairs, impaled on a virus of non-existent civic duty, drunk off the impression that whichever political actor allegedly in charge might dare cause the amount of harm we wish we could, imperiling our piety on one another by the fuck ton. iPhone magistrates underscore the field, doling out boundless chores of ethical miscuing against the arts. My flock has politically flown south down its own teardrops, platforming a bandwagon correctitude into lucre. We renovatingly shat a moral code borrowed from the institution dry nursing us, with its counter-corporatized isochronal insurgencies. Our new multi-homed progressive censors sweeping past the religious right with an appendage transposed and equally gangrenous.
Yes, we've come to consider ourselves the community foremost writers have, another sponsored branch of the educational system. We organized our chew toys in the name of striving and reamed ourselves right in the art for likes online. I, for one, miss the cloth pretensions of a dead tree. I am versed in a Rolodex of corpses, the archived dead, but I remain semi-familiar with a couple of prevailing contemporaries, using the term lightly, so the original sin of my comportment can no longer botch itself a sales revenue. Boo-hoo and good riddance. An excuse to work hard. What artist ever dunks himself out of the gutter for longer than a year, anyway? What audience is preferable to a kill account? I was born to get my hands dirty. Someone has to be willing to fully soil their mindset. We imposed a late-term revenge for the Red Scare, playing whack-a-mole with any journal that won't declare itself an identity-politicking, safe-spaced Marxist ally, doxing or ignoring them, reducing them to unnecessary apologies for crimes either pretend, minor, or fuck it, acting as a fascinating supplement to the work itself. My hope is that in 10 years, this will sound as ridiculous as it is to live through, but I suspect progress only ever becomes parody down a narrowing chute. Today my guest is Egon Rutherford. That is his real name. He refuses to hide behind a moniker like most of us have to. Welcome, Egon. You know, along with Elvis, Egon was a handy Detroit slur for white boys who wore glasses in my day. My position is this. Saw all the edges off society until it is the friendliest fall down utopia you think you want. Let humanity settle into one overstayed handshake, yet art exists beyond every surface domain, and the more it becomes a bumper bowling committee PR'd into a movement, the greater the volume of my expanding puke. You are an ideologue, well known for braving the nastier and paler neighborhoods of identity retail, which feel to me just another inverse of the skin game hoodwink, or perhaps a faction of a faction split into the produce of a train band. As someone who has recently risen through the questionable ranks of literary publication, never a wide leap for anyone, Is your interest in the arts cultural, or what is your interest in the arts? Do you prefer your curation to speak for itself? I have noticed zero overt banishments toward the opposition from your political end of the spectrum in the last few short years. Not yet, anyway. Now that the right is kind of a cultural underdog, if you will, starting with Gamergate and the death of comedy, and keeping in mind that I'm old enough to remember when anything right-wing was, and likely still is, if less so now, intrinsically a creative person's nemesis. Is this somehow a marketing opportunity to win minds not bred, touting free speech as a ruse? Or, failing that, what would be the rationale in the Gordon Gekko party behind any interest in a field that grants no tangible reward? Thanks for having me on the show, and for the near amount of balls in your questions. Hell, seems writers came down with a dastardly case of save-the-world-itis. Nazis are the only ones not burning books now. How has it come to this? Am I a marketing ploy? Who ain't? More importantly for you, the far-left media has been pouring its kitty litter on George Carlin's corpse. All these newly minted taboos exist for artists to poke, I agree, embrace it. Infuriating that they took your nihilism, your status below society, your art for art's sake, ultra-neo-sublime, burn-it-all-down shtick, and turned it out for profit in the news. Enfeebled intellectual informants infected your trade. Artists should play for their own blood first. These neo-Marxist landfill fillers lying that their journalists are just chasing a buck. I think they're still upset spoilers that Bambi's mom got shot. Now that we're publishing any boundaries yet, we're not pushing anything beyond its boundary, but who's listening anyway? Haha. Are you a Nazi? Sure, I'm anything I'm called times 10. I happen not to care whatever chromatic muss anyone I meet dons upon their carriage, and I don't really noticeably change my behavior beyond maybe the typical feeble-minded accusation of microaggression. But my existence is no excuse for shame, any more than everyone else's should be, existentially perhaps, though God is making a comeback. I've been known to utter such gasp-worthy to the common tattletale utterances as every stereotype is not only true, but never enough bleak of an aperçu. Rhyming's goofy. If I said my French stench correct, in that cerebral palsy tone they own, see, I rap, I'm not racist. Just need a Hebe producer to fart me out a beat. If some social justicer or woman, same difference, has you pissed to the point of physical violence, seeing as none of them are strong enough to pose a real threat. You lost control of your shit, you are feeble, buddy, to yourself and to others on a permanent basis.
What do you make of the distinction between the use of slurs as they may occur via depiction, barroom, or locker room jocularity, ironic barbs or bonding, releasing steam, or even temporarily poorly directed situational rage vented through fistfights perhaps, versus the contrary, such as a coordinated logos or nebulous and jeopardous dictums concerning groups of people, stereotypes in campaign summation, backed by whatever research, real or not, as a serious, and I might become impotent saying the word, discourse, a stoked fear-mongering. As there are no jeopardous words, my artist friend, there is no jeopardous ideology. Only the will as force exerts it. People are just utensils on the sucked side of an idea. I sense you are catering to the weaker worries of your fellow doodlers. Your censors are all deep left. College cowards brainwashed beyond the point of sanitation. Middle-class kids of professors resentful about debt servitude. Those who can barely lift their picket signs. Question the narrative and end up with another label indistinct from the ones we already live out. Racist, Nazi, cheaply sucker punch a separatist for his goofy theories. Cis scum. I wear my labels on my sleeve where they form a symbol far more formidable than any fucking swastika. Shame is done for. We are tunneling into the collectivist me. Are you not a fan of your own people?
Never a guy for groups, not even much in the coalition of myself. Being aware, too, that my kind of self-disgust has become a platitudinous marketing point on the interweb, a newfangled susceptibility that allows me to be positioned by powers I, even in my old age, am still grasping to understand.
Have you been abandoned? What has left you so willfully abandoned that you would ignore others who are as abandoned? You discard your legacy and then gotta adopt one from an over-romanticized tradition. Come back to the fold, brother. Art won't get your back.
That's why I prefer it. I disappeared long ago deep within the number 0. It's how I register my vision. I gotta parse the air with fractions to know where I'm at. You could classify this as beyond fatalism and below thought altogether. A feeling bigger than a reaction, weaker than the violence that losers of my wanton ilk are often stranded in. Some piggish enormity as cosmically vomitous as birth.
Uh-oh! I never lost anything because I built who I am by the inch and so can keep stock, dangerously if need be, and needs be. I have been conjured by the times, if you will, if I can borrow your metaphorical torque. Your field trampled itself deafer and dumber than ever before concerning the world at large, down the echo chamber of its forever trembling uterus. So much so that, finally, real artists, sans a career, must crawl to me to be spared the academic tit, if they care to care about publication, and you all ultimately do. They banned everyone, opening the door for a man who refuses to fear what he is in every aspect. It is said that the left are cannibals. They eat their own, out of cowardice, in the face of what? They worship commonality. I submit, this is because they are all children who sucked their candy until their skins became a caul of sugar, and they hide snug beneath its flummoxing warmth from a nourishment the lack of which will pursue them until some catastrophe proves how unnecessary their vampiric societal cradling really was. They used their postmodernist religion to gain rank and power like an infant with a bazooka. All it will take is the barest inkling of a myth, one side pouch colostomy of order to put them back in line. They deserve what they get, and way worse.
But is there not a balance to be kept, where these extremes can met out some compromises? I guess like a marriage, and I guess that answers my own fucking question as to the fertility of all of that.
No, and a second shrill hysterical no. The dichotomy system participation trophied itself to death. You can open a window and hear its squalid tears pinging like a tuning fork across the sinuses of students everywhere. Window meaning every fucking screen. I rely on no one. My followers are driven to me and I to them by the godless drivel projected at us daily. We don't depend on each other like a clucking box social, drunk on celebrated victimhood. Not like these compassion vigilantes addicted to a fake fight for hits of dopamine. They list me on all the garbage people lists their faggoty kind can pixie up. They speechify their droppings by the alphabet. The trolls grew wings and wrote a manifesto, kids, and it is an art more beautiful than all of you. I've heard you repeat these humdrum obsessions with some elite, race-based, blame-gamed enemy, this conspiracy theory illness concerning anachronistic compulsive polemics quite insufferably time-worn. And, a great excuse for most others to dismiss the fight against actual political correctness. Why? Your fear of that issue betrays your blog journalist sentimentality and is painful to hear. Because if you're a writer, you should understand that in America, the issue of racism at this stage in history is about being allowed to purport such theories. Any theory, no matter how fucked. Not to incite into action per se, not that I'm against what might be needed, but why can't anyone comprehend the difference between a thought and a behavior? The only thing close to a concentration camp we have is at the border, stupid, like in every goddamn country since forever. Is it okay if I'm rude in my speech sometimes, Mrs. Temperance Union NPC Soy Boy? What does NPC stand for? Non-player character. It's a recent meme. I don't know. I don't know what any of that is. In video games, Christ, you're old. It's an in-game character that runs off the shoddy AI of its designers. Oh, like a cyborg. No. And don't say the word like to me unless it is a simile. Up speak, Valley Girl. Okay. Trolling online. Malevolent commenting with no discernible goal. Or a bot-oriented goal. Perhaps belies the addictiveness of a taboo, similar to what artists do, or should try to do. Then clickbait will paint the troll as proof of some envisioned Nazi movement because they receive advertisement money by this type of muckraking. Or maybe I have that backwards. I see the aspects of a lie as it revolves. Yet, is it not true in some cases, at least, that your people go beyond theory into violent action and bring undue attention to my theories belie danger? So does everything, pussy. I'm just saying, I think, though I am merely vaguely informed concerning politics, you tap out of an argument beta level fast. What is your exercise routine like? Debate isn't my... Listen, I am 50-something years old, and when I stand up to piss, there is a great struggle to keep my bladder and colon from forming a duet. My point is not that you're a joke, but that you're joking. I kind of am, and am not, and will and won't accordingly. According to the moment we're in, fuck all of us. But less so, my fellow crackers. The propaganda against this 1950s idea of us is most foul, most suspicious, kind of hilarious, and merely cultural. And culture flips itself inside out every 10 years or less. And these pseudo-revolutionaries and their fine etiquette utopia are all outnumbered, so if some self-effacement will help you squirm less, sure. I'm not impressed with your supposed anti-PC declaration so far, Wichly. Are you part of the affirmative action bastion? It's not a rule book for me. I go on gut. I never guilt out of or apologize for or codify my irreverent insensitivities with the insult of an explanation or the comfort of the politically like-minded. That's why no one will take the time to sift the incoherent petals you drop on your way up the aisle where your delicate 9-degenerate masters await their tenderless honeymoon. Most people have gone full psyops without realizing the nature of their own implications. Which branch do you report to, comrade? Everyone with a smartphone is deputized CIA as far as I'm concerned. You, I think, are the one who is the plant. Baiting this race shit so the language can eventually be fined via cell tower. I lost my job, then my family, including 2 children. They forgot my face by now, I'm sure. Ever lose a house disputing a politically correct coworker? Just to be real right-wing, logical, coherent, clear with you that happened. Not everyone who tries to challenge this shit has the foresight to veil their cliches with a psychology pap smear con job and walk away a down-home zillionaire. And we can't all rely on a cadre of jingoists revamped into a square-assed camp counselorship and go play grab-ass in the woods singing naughty ideas. Are you near tears? If you can't control your face and what comes out of it, how could you control your woman? And what the hell business did you have fathering kids being all messed up and in your weird profession? It's on you and none other. I'm shocked they stayed around, such a grunt. Families need leaders, not bleeders. I mean, look at you. What's your diet like? I could pick you up over my head. And I don't mean sex, just so we're clear. I eat, kosher. Let's not confuse the adrenaline junkie who relies on the excuse of his sense of justice and incites violence with a publicly agreed upon enemy because he can't think. Let's not confuse that with this nationalist commitment, this tired organization compromised by shared values, another club ensconced in faux battles, if you will, causes, groups, and sides being where the artist finds himself blown to like a shook willow, despite his every effort to avoid himself, others, I don't know, even pets. Self-destruction is more the pattern I'm invested in here, and the rendering of such. Good job. You already look like an ethnic Rorschach. You were raised by multimillionaire civil rights musketeers, right? How bad did your nurturing mar you? Are you about to axe me more shit? You got dipped in a little cephalopodic squid wreck, huh? You swam too close to the eggs, my friend. There's someone's nation in you and it's not mine. Are you disappointed that the figureheads you were raised to rebel against recently got surpassed by the same side that's been allowing you for so long to pick your goddamn nose into infliction? Writers tilt their heads like dogs toward whichever politics is said best in the moment. Or, nothing is well said anymore. Most writers crave official accolades these days. Their pleather-textured empathies. I like that your existence in literature is a big fuck you to that. I bet you're one of these idiots who finds techno music life-altering. I do, however, resent the big fuck you to me that seems increasingly apparent and inevitable from either direction during the entirety of my life. It's like when a woman asks about something you're into, then takes your excited explanation out of context to highlight some supposed condensation. What's your problem with women? Were you born so misogynist you took an eraser to the exit wound? Did you drop out between footnotes, Professor? You're more qualified for a blacklisting than I am. All you gotta do to never be furious with a female is walk away the second she becomes unmanageable. If you're miffed at anything her hormones conjecture, you're her sucker, not her pimp. Oh, well, what's your track record with box? Insurmountable? I don't submit to charm, said or bled, so I never had cause to seriously resent a woman. Just what some of them are doing to the culture. Your issues stem from the old lefty beta mishap. Let's be equals, I respect you. I'm not 50s guy, I'm your honey sweetie pillow-talking fellow lesbian. I'm a real sensitive writer's soul blender. That shit that leads men down the tubes in the literal sense. You need a shove off your little Third Reich swing set. Oh, and well, come hop on, queer. You've been escaping vulnerability with ladies. You've given in, not once, and been fooled never? Are you a professional wrestler, albino iceberg slim? Willpower eludes most, definitely writers, when it comes to love, alcohol, and not blowing your brains out all day. Your wife, let me guess, way younger? There's no challenge in that. My wife! How much younger? Just a couple curvaceous years below. Not a lot. Smarter than anyone her age and mind. Unfortunately for me, let's skip my wife, ex-wife. Sounds like she skipped you across a body of passing interests. Hey, fuck you, you little cunt! Come here! Alright. Anyway, might makes right, right? Might makes right. See what I'm about, Wichly? Ever been to a gym before, you typist? Don't ever fuck with me. My feed has eyes in the back of its head. Okay. Alright. Was that your combat training, or did we just switch orientations? Alright. You won. Take a seat. Let's sit down. Ladies first. Alright, fuck you. Alright. You fight like Christmas passed you by. Like the commander of a dandelion, mid-breeze. Shall I break your thumb so you can't suck it anymore or stuff it in your mouth where it takes up residency regardless? What? Are you crying out for the state to save you? Threatening a lawsuit? Now where's your cheap version of anarchy landed you? Attention, Wichly listeners and handlers. This man is an agent of the teat. He wants you soft as he is, shamed as he is. He wants you cuddling kitties, so every edgy work of art can eventually feel its frame on a fucking motel wall. Squirm, Wormly, beneath the toilet stall of your next contaminant mate. Someone got in you young and stopped up your booty chute with a lubed broom. You grew tall inside your mother's couch cushion, cunt. Portentous anti-fa chicken hawk, shoving over garbage cans for a living. People like you keep me well trained. You spotted me on the bench with a sound macing when I was preoccupied. At least have the dignity to tell your master thank you before you flail near a real Bushido. The far left impacted us both. But I won't be administering the brand of molestation you use to pigeonhole our nation. Poets like you can be worms or you can be dogs. Which do you prefer? Want to graduate into my lap? Lap dog? You can be a majestic hound at best. Gonna be a good boy? There, run free, Bubba! Trust me, my peers, if you scrambled toward any of them in such a manner, would not be half as merciful. They would have dislocated you piecemeal. I just bothered with an affable chokehold in self-defense. We should stop recording, for your sake. I'm fine. Continue. Temporary setback, and, point taken. My wife, are you familiar with the work of Seward Collins? The original arrogant American fascist, back when there was a real horror behind that pestilential affiliation? Nope. Is it lonely, digging through the catacombs, where you have always and will always preside? Hey, didn't you write a grotesque pedo scenario or two? And the Illuminati still rejected your application? You must be a real sick customer to outdo them. Should I run you out of town with or on a pitchfork because you thought bad thoughts? Look, just because I can throw my dick like dice through a woman's life all the way back to her first orgasm and kiss an armpit or two don't make me a pervert. The poet investigates hell psychically, not literally, so don't be an autistic about it. Let's concede that if there is any moral obligation, and there is not, it's to render your impressions of this hellish world as hellishly as possible by whatever means. The truly moral book, and they don't all have to do this, there are no requirements, should land its author in prison after page 1. This can be accomplished in all lives, monkish or not, though some do succumb and curtail their interpretations into lowly criminal deeds. Yet guilt by association is pandemic, isn't it? If I could complete any of the crimes I've written, I wouldn't need to write them, clearly. Sure, yeah, you like to fuck your own shed colic, don't you? What I have are known as blood spiders, and they are in my hair morning, noon, and night. Sometimes I think they compose the entirety of my hair. Ever get those? That's your genetic mishap. We're in the cry wolf era, the take advantage of men's craving to protect a girl era. The tradition wounded me, so fracture everything into nonsense era, and it's time to cycle back to meaning. Similarly, and my main question all along is, should we be willing to toss out all of the literary techniques of the 20th century and go back to the same ordinances that corralled us into a multitude bent on fitting in just because some shitty postmodern theory has become as corrupt and stale as everything that employed it? Meanwhile, the actual art it left behind is brilliant, and should we not incorporate and combine these methods toward at least a goal of something new? I'm only going to say this one time. Nothing was or will be new. That term is a slur as far as I'm concerned, and the first effective one. So, the more you fear the fathering you never got, the more your techniques are exposed as wanton, the presentation, according to your personal gibberish of a million furry backsides feigning their own egg sacs in gratitude to your white knighting against logic. I will drag your apple-throated head through town square until this becomes apparent, or I die first from too much applause. Okay. Alright, he's gone. That went well. Okay, I think, yeah, he's left. He's gone. That was okay. That went well, I think, and good talk. I think I might see a physician about my neck, perhaps, but otherwise, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's gone.
An acquaintance of mine, another post-grad self-inducted into the ever-expanding subprime loan system, received a message on his newfangled tattletale contraption everyone that age keeps glued to their palm, as if they were dyslexic fortune-tellers. It came from a private number he could not block. The complete message, now renowned in some circles, follows intact. Any personal information has been muted. Hello. This message is for concerning his student loan repayment plan, formerly with, which is in the process of a third-party resettlement. And yeah, as you made me call back twice, your slaughter will lack celerity, deadbeat cocksucker. Perhaps you've come to understand who has at this juncture purchased your debt, and the utter seriousness with which it is incumbent upon you to address said issue in person. An event that will occur regardless of whatever hidey-hole under your mother's skirt, dangling off the bristly swing set betwixt her pork-chop labia, her Munchausen slut combustion slung over you like suntanning in scuba gear, a vast death mask in reverse, TP sour balls sprinkled on top, apron strings of yeast stuffed up the dead kitten you thought you had to be to avoid installments. How's that for English 101, my little ring around the clit, you fucking vulva embezzlement, Jolly Rancher messiah? Speaking of your mother's cunt, let's just say what plopped out of it is up for grabs wholesale. Scalp yourself in preparation. You'll be halfway there. Don't skim the blade all the way down to your twinkle toes, fairy fuck. If the money ain't forthcoming, if you become a papyral blip cross the lettering on my brass knuckles perchance, will induce cessation of the contract you signed 5 fucking years ago, when your placenta was still in cursive, punk. Shut to a close like an unwound sphincter mid-death rattle. Use your lopsidedly cuntish pickpocketed degree to add that policy up. I seen you growing tits inside your hovel, in a fungal basement, like a tick stuck to a fucking paragraph. Put on a tutu and start memorizing the Book of the Dead, 'cause you're the fucking protagonist, dizzy twat. You've been dying since the land before time, and I promise your rattle will take forever. I hear you at night suck the neighbor's dog for treats while your kindly mother pops off on the spires where she grew the brain I now circumstantially own. What the fuck world are you in, shit smear,
where restitution is allowed such an egregious girth. You lost in the skunked paneling of your mama's final tampon? Are you her riled abridgment puttering secretly bonked on language of divorced of dough? You must have been the meal that wrecked her oven, fucking welfare clot, baby bottle herpes. You stink like a broke joypad and the video game is cottage cheese. You fucking smegma copyright. How many McDonald's threw your fucking application in a fryer, hot shot? You can only get to know yourself by squatting beneath a ladder, butt boy. You were born out your father's cock into some janky plastering, then mandraked into a foreclosed lisp. You come from boiled sperm, chicken shit flambe. Soiled syrup flapjacks bleat within you. You got a big chunk of hobo jism tied around your life. Better start counting the blood in your stool, 'cause I'm gonna collect something, slab princess. Forensic rube. Gangbang constipation by proxy pap smear lackey. Coin pouch adjunct. You're scheduled for a tiara fitting at the morgue. You sleep at this location 2-1 on Avenue, zip code Bon Voyage, Richter's Head. A rather discerning voicemail. Perhaps you can relate to threats of this nature, surpassing the softer side of a repayment agreement. Not that the young aren't in a stiflingly anxious and rampant career scramble as it is, having been plummeted somewhere below collective fatalism in regard to the rarity of a pliable living, the routine of marriage and mortgage having lost a bit of its supposed splendor these days. Maybe some zombies eke by, enough do, too many, but these sensitive intellects so nurtured by their schoolyard indoctrinations, kids in their 20s, brains not yet fully formed, and that's a medical truth. Whiny, perhaps misled avatars for the causes their teachers and journalists fantasized into a group forfeiture while profiting from their usury. There's astray and then there's suicide as rite of passage. Though these platitudes were arrived at not entirely without a reason, right dominance to left. These kids, sans any leadership that isn't grim or perverse, are shoveled by the shift across a germ warfare of customers, the only remaining jobs left being those in the lower bowels of retail, soon to be replaced by low IQ machines, praying to the cruel demons of income contingent repayment plans forever docked into senility, grown old alone besides a wrinkled fuck buddy, or none, swapping venereal situations in front of doctors run by pill companies, lost in that abysmal stature. They brought this upon themselves, sure, a staunch and arrogant summation as dismal as whichever previous mess that begot theirs. What excuse can whoever so greatly benefits from such a generation-wide lack of foresight hide behind? Now they have a live haunting to come to terms with, one of many acute manifestations, and I found him, through much nervous inquiry. He is here today, nameless, of course, as his work demands. I do appreciate a frank demeanor in allowing a modicum of comprehension for your innovative economic recoupment process, a sort of indentured servant hunter, if the lightest contemporary and ironic usage of that term applies. Fancy enough order to them words, Chief. This fucking guy, what a kooky roost warming your pantyhose, hatching some diamonds in his yoke. Lucky for you, your debts lie elsewhere, Teach. No one called dibs on your caboose, but, Do they sell tickets to the train they should pull on you for enunciating that coddled batch of trinkets there? All with such gorgeous elan? Nah, you group 'em good, Professor Ballsack. I think your pacifier came with Latin captioning on the suck noise. I'm busting your balls, but look out, because I will, in fact, literally, as queers on the fucking internet say, and I don't mean homosexuals, I just mean 90% of men today. Don't get me wrong, you know. Or please, do get me wrong. Fuck it clamped inside where no biology could reach. Till I cut a path so deep all your lies about gender flexibility would turn fucking true. But what I'm saying is, yeah, I've sliced a couple lobes out their casing in the night. No excuses, no second chances, no more reasoning. I barter with no man, or woman, by the way. I'm very egalitarian when it comes to agony. The top-hatted, bougie bums of this country been supported long enough. Been propped up on their parents' knees and the cartilage just got runny. Call it a big, long con sting if you want to force your shit show on a government. That's how the world do, bitch. You get diddled. You're just more pudding on a tarp. Sign the fucking papers, $20K a year for 4 years, scratch out a willy-nilly living afterwards. Cobble your strife into an SSI lie. Then I give you a free fucking education, and it's condoned, ordained even. Ain't nothing confounding about it. No modern dance to how I splay you, unless the gases you release are fucking postmodern. Real naturalistic, something closer to a psalm, you might say. You're saying private loan companies and the government both turn a disapproving yet silently encouraging blind eye to the fact that you have stalked, harassed, raped, mutilated, tortured, and murdered upwards of 200 graduates? They wash their hands of me. I wash my hands in pee. So many piss their britches. Too busy filing charges on their boyfriends 'cause he sneezed in his sleep one time to reckon with genuine terror. Just because I enjoy my work don't make me unprofessional. And guess how many loans are paid in full? I bet people pay up quick. I'm checking my wallet and I'm not even on the list. Most ante up after the first message is issued. Step 2, if they seem like they can gather funds somehow, I encourage this by placing a present where they sleep, something soggy, cliché as that might sound. They then usually comply wholeheartedly. These ain't brave people. There's been a definite uptick in payment. But as they say, Santa Claus likes to let his milk grow some skin. These little shedding rats prefer the corner they live in, I think. No worries, I got the good poison. What is the deciding factor in inciting you to violence against those who default? I come calling when it's clear they plan to ignore their responsibility on a permanent basis. When the cost of their interest outdoes the viability of any progress, or if the slightest chipping away ain't underway, then I'm green-lit. Is the charge of privilege against your victims its own excuse for such mayhem, and what is the larger organization that benefits? Isn't it more profitable to drain students' minimum wage over a lifetime regardless of recovery due to interest rates? Them dead presidents drown back to life in the blood on my glove. I am the sole beneficiary. All other concerns revolve around the work itself and the artistry thereof. I drive a new car to every hit. Does it come down to whose parents' basement has the loftiest paneling? Is it because this abandoned class of overeducated semi-servants have become a reinvented variety of dandy, a male mistress conundrum to the tune of Rothschild's Monsieur Venus, the low to middle classes disguising themselves as funky aristocrats? Is this the source of the hatred from those in trades to the actual rich? And why are these crimes being so openly applauded across the media? There's too cerebral, then there's daft, then there's all the shit your head just inflated. But shouldn't this casting of a business model around one's 20s be less draconian in practice and not continue presenting itself as the choke point of every career path, which it isn't? Shouldn't they only offer a detailed loan option exclusive to the few technical degrees that actually pay out? Or could they not make the servitude more clear and direct? Colleges incorporated the option of extensive on-campus job training? Is it because no functioning system wants to outweigh the potential of its betterment against the risk of collapse? So each minor improvement is parceled out over a cosmetically safe and complacent stretch of time. Must the state always become venereal with big business and vice versa? And will the mainstream finally disentangle itself from the misinformation that colleges provide any mass utility? They're a minor and specialized thing, not a source of pride or shame or a cost benefit. Why is this fallacy still so incumbent of a con? Is there no path toward instruction, no enlightenment the young can be caulked with to overcome this cyclical and corrupt situation? Must men like you remain the scavenging profiteers of everything sullied by its own potential? Your spine must get sore propped that deep beneath the world. Perhaps as a palliative, I could share a positive experience of mine. I have a theory that the millennial source of contention began with the popularization of the Harry Potter franchise. What the fuck is that? Kids' books and films. They incentivized bullied kids into the glittering gold of the magic trophies they were handed non-stop for participation. This woman put a big encouraging halo around unearned specialness and trained children to read with their eyes wet and their minds readably simple as possible. She sprinkled fairy dust on a generation that never got punched, and look what happens. On and on you go, speculating and instigating. Come here. See how I fit your head in one hand? You're a rather kittenish man. The right amount insecure. I like that. You pat yourself down for attention. Listen here, pal. No species stands above a bullet. This is the procedure. Give you an idea how I operate. So few of these ingrates ever think to beg me. Says a lot about them. You're right. Their entertainment is commiserate with dropping fast before a confrontation. Rough to discover how special they aren't. It's like stripping meat off the same skull and rewind all day. I'd suffer depression if there were no anomalies. Some of these dude targets, sprites, are busying their eyes. Thumb warriors of the gaming system. They think they can fight. Maybe they got some grade school weapons lying around. They'll feign confusion at my presence, lock up mostly, freeze, play dumb. There's those who crumple delightfully. Let me specify. If you meet me face to face at that point, you're just a message I'm leaving behind to scare the others. You could throw me $1 million, I'll take it. You're still dying a mean death. I bring a cooler sometimes. I make sandwiches. I set up shop, get comfy. Something unique will happen eventually when their eyes bulge free, I'll involve a parent. Bring the whole family. Why not? They're complicit. I like an audience. Mom gets home early, hears a noise, stumbles downstairs. Her and Dad gotta offer me this and that to spare the rod, their dime a dozen sacrifice. Call some rich uncle who don't exist. Yeah, I value their feedback. The favor I grant is they join their baby in heaven. No more lowly lolling with the credit karma. In this manner, I'm like a more persistent Kevorkian, just as merciful. Bring these lives they confusedly insist on living to a pissed-out close. Say I balked and they did live. Your parents are rot-ass old, guy. They couldn't pay your debts for you. You think the pittance they leave behind ain't getting divvied up between the government and lawyers and funeral homes? Them spoils are manja for the system you were too busy picketing to escape, dummy. They'll soon be squatters in their baby bedroom on state-owned land, another zombie in the street soliciting as per usual. I'm a new type of school counselor. The need arose. I mean, these chumps want to live life married to their alien parents? Okay, Mr. Freud. I make them act that fantasy out in the physical domain if I'm bored enough. Screw both of them, raw dog kid. His birthday cake's too fucking wet to chew. Anyway, never a big struggle. The fun is in the disassembly. Except, this one kid went batshit. I almost panicked when he grappled me. I ran afoul of the fucking Karate Kid. He was small but agile with his balance. One of those jujitsu geeks, an engineer of his own space. I know your more basic combos. Spread my training around the disciplines. I'm mostly a tools guy. But I'm big and I got natural talent. A somewhat demonic pain threshold. And I fight to the death, like Tyson, for instance. It was never a game for him, neither. So this twerp caught me off guard with a skill of his own. Who would imagine a deadbeat effective at applying, well, anything? Very rare indeed. How he died was my best elation. I'm an even more rank beast with my back against the wall. Lash my teeth in his nose. You can't train away that level of pain. Right to the sinus. Swallowed his sneeze for him from the inside. Supreme kill. Influential. I changed my method after him. In the ass of night I slip in bed with them. Start purring till they wake in my arms. Then I don't need to explain myself much, just enough so they know why before I begin. Not that it matters. All that matters is the tableau I leave for forensics. They're my biggest fans. You know, if you don't let them lose consciousness, people come right the fuck apart in the ansious trip backward through evolutionary annulment. Big fucking U-turn to the pre-mammal ghoul beneath any pretension of a soul. When you are killing someone, you strip them down to the animal beneath their flesh. And you see the bare automaton writhing within the shell, its own separate life exposed, squirming to articulate its horror, spasmodically jerking with incomprehension at what this second layer of life could be, scorched into the puberty of an oncoming atmosphere, part reptile, part monkey, shrieking through its eyes, darting in bottomless terror, the palsied zoology that steers us all. Not to sound like one of these nihilist kids took too many philosophy classes. Of course they can't pay. That's a challenge. They think it's cute to talk hell and Satan as if LaVey's church ain't just fucking social justice types now. Like this stupid show's goofy symbol. The rock star flag on your half-a-retro manhood death metal sure is neat, real dark. I like the boss myself, but I show these ex-students pseudo-hot-ons. Hell is just comfort food where I come from. These nihilist kids, they think they welcome their own demise. Huh! They must be given direct passage to the depths of which they speak. One in a flat affectation told me once he went to Catholic school, grew up in a rough neighborhood, and, most intimidating, was once married. So what the fuck torture could I do to him? Well, I got creative. In a way his aesthetic sensibilities couldn't lavish. So I stick their heads in what I call the file cabinet. A measured asphyxiation, metallic in nature, a claustrophobic bodysuit of types. Squared metal, about the size of a person, clammy interior, induces panic attacks, regulates air intake, eventuates certain pressures on the torso, compression dispensation. The metal sheets enclosing it are flexible, but they weigh down on the chest over time. I'll kick the kid around inside this attachment so their equilibrium's real squalid. Man, they come out broken like a squirrel on amphetamines, nervous system all irreparably fucked. They exit with the shit heavy in their shorts, long past the point of screaming, no more sense of time, 25% die of fright. I keep them in store. But I'll tell you this, they fucking care. Some I let live prisoners in their own body, staked on what little remains, frozen in a permanent state of discomfort and despair and slow burn anxiety, something no doctor could cure, no voice could say the symptom. Those are my dudes, en masse. Girls, more complex. They possess different modes. They pose till their glow goes quiet. But when they first assess what's coming, it's really a bad death they die. Shame how no one prepared them for it. Many offer their clam, of course. Why you bartering with sex? Should have been whoring that ass for money before I got here. When the loss of a sexual power dynamic in their language becomes apparent, when it tilts out of their favor, they snap volcanically, fall the fuck apart, infant shit. It's basically an abortion at that point, which is what they should have been anyway. I say, you got no trade left, because I'll be taking that blowjob dead or alive, honey. This one bitch had gotten herself pregnant, in her situation, in her dire financial straits, looking for another handout. How arrogant. She's begging for its life as if her stomach held any of the value she came to lack. How you think that went for her baby? Learned a lot of brand new anatomical shit that day. I sent them both to hell with the exorcism of a manicure. You know, you seem like the kind of guy who... The only type of bitch paying you any mind is dizzy from reciting the fork marks you leave in her period stains. But the system at play here is so obviously suspect. You'd have to suffer from some kind of retard gout not to spot it. Some of these loan packages sponsored a sullied girlfriend for the male client. We got slut benefits to enlist if you shoot your credit for us. It's a tight organization, fronts in every commercial spread. But these bitches, the mark sometimes got the nerve to weep. He's saying, as if it weren't expected, oh no! My state-issued regulation bitch got a jungle gym up her snatch. What fucking trauma is this? Jesus Christ, man. Ain't you gonna ask me more neat shit? I can't get a word in edgewise with this cocksucker. Yes, do you feel regret? I'm joshing around with you. You're real interesting of a host, a real interesting guy. Regret for what? My victims live with me in my sleep. I pet them there. We're clutched in the same psyche till I pass. And to tell you the truth, I don't remember being young. They called me Maliacho in the crib, I'm told. Bit my twin into retardation not long after birth. We were shat on a hardwood floor 'cause Dad used his fist as a fucking doula. Yeah, we used to play catch with a coat hanger. They both perished when the house burnt down, not too mysteriously. I was jumped at the orphanage till I got big enough to steal some butt. They called me the kidney wrecker 'cause kids often died after my turn at sodomy, mostly 'cause my size and their being that much younger. A solid system, swank setup. Again, these histories are merely related to me, as I seem to recall about 9 decades going backwards stuck as an adult. I remember when men wore fedoras. How is that possible? You appear no older than perhaps 50. I don't know. It ain't the eating of kale, but I do recommend the pineal gland, mid-adrenaline dump, uncooked out of skull, still glinting, helps a bit. I shit righteously. I realize that you're being hyperbolic. The fear you feel is because of the proximity between us. And because I grabbed your head a little too hard, got some blood behind the ear there. My apologies. Maybe the mask isn't helping your comfort. But what you're experiencing is just one layer of a preamble. Every tenet of my rhetoric is based on dominance, though I flip through accents depending on the client's perception. You know how to applaud a shadow, Wichly? Want me to show you how? The First Amendment's hiding under your bed, filing its teeth on your chamber pot, bonking off in the glass where you soak your teeth. Language doesn't need a goddamn law in order to be free. Its blunder is worse than internal. This episode's content might be shocking to anyone in the Casper Hauser generation. It may get mistaken if more than 10 people listen to it for some kind of anti-Islam propaganda because of my guest's situation. Rest assured, the Asiatic and Arabesque are obviously integral to my composition. One cannot ignore the beauty of words derived from the Persian, such as azure and scarlet. Racism reduces one's lingual scope. I eschew nothing from the centuries of ornate amalgamations fluent in our lingo, and am, in fact, greedily enamored of each, because the artist exists tick-like, drunk unto death off whichever nation's slobbering undercarriage. I would prefer a Frankenstein tongue lolling in my shorts. On the other inculcation, if we are addressed by a group, a nation, an organized religion, or any civic contention, if it is a corporatized global community, balls to you, nuts to your whole bankroll. I never met an activist who wasn't born wearing a propeller hat, drowning in the viscera of their cause. Blundering between a rather glum visage and an uncustomarily misproportioned sense of human contact, I tiptoed over a moat of my own drool like Romeo skipping kidney stones across his urethral adenoma, resulting in girlfriend number 1. We were in high school. It took me that long. And the best thing I can say about her is that she was a willing participant. Her religion was organized, a Middle Eastern knockoff I mistook as interesting in its scarcity for about a week, tolerating it just to be near her, and my religion involved what she sat on, amplified in stereo to replace all others. Not that I'd been with anyone else. I was precocious in my hermitude, and devoted enough to commit to the idea of a domestic future to appease this mousy but pretty idiot's socially dependent, typical and boring series of rituals, before she confessed to a number of handjob-level past experiences, about which I shamed her none. Then, happily for both of us, she went on to prove herself quite the demi-mondaine. Botched by our virginities, I nodded until her fallopian tubes were tied around the steering wheel of any progress, gobbling what was left of her overly big hymen, as the connection I assumed would blossom into a life. Having had reciprocal confirmation, both verbally and in numerous love letters, not that such documents are binding, something above government legislation dissolved between her and a motley lineup of other dudes. Meanwhile, I still worshipped via cunnilingus, during which, sustained by my rapturous gulping, my uber-supportive attendance and fruitless encouragements, because her clitoris hadn't ripened enough to function, she, perhaps as a symptom of her overarching lack of respect, her emotionally indifferent bird-brain neglect, and general bratty disregard, beyond youthful solipsism and into a need for rampant cocks, smart enough to refuse caring for her so tediously well, having sailed her the entirety of my minimum wage, failed to mention that she had coated herself, interior and exterior, with an alarming amount of Vagisil. My mouth became a numb facet divorced from the element of its usage, and this suited her because some tepid offense had begun to be taken every time I spoke. There is a context for how this was allowed to occur without genuine retaliation outside the page, or one or two mean paragraphs, the odd unintentionally self-injurious prank more at my expense than hers. It was that I was taught not just to fear the image of myself as her abuser, but to apologize for the myth of some history that never occurred. Certainly not as far as her bullshit life was concerned, anyway. You have to understand, too, that the retro era had a culturally right slant to it, and this encouraged a more numinous male to bow before his better marketed chick. This Skoptic syndrome, through every fault of my own, persisted into my first marriage to a former student half a decade younger, who, incorrigible in her women's studies programming, insisted on taking leeway with a couple friends of mine, to which I, at this point, at least possessing by now the gumption to respond with an increasingly youthful bevy of retaliations, said, "Well, dear, be yourself." She left with the job, not surprisingly, when I was fired for hiccuping, along with my waning interest in the field of copulation, having long explored most of its puffering hemispheres. Misogyny, so I'm told, often by those with a severe mental paunch. My behavior never drastically changes in anyone's presence, and I only instigate when I am cornered or in defense, or if the entity is larger than I could try to be. Serafima Spigotsky, a petite fellow pariah, persona non grata twinsies, donor of many a delectable scar, may have been high on MDMA with me during the following interview, and though our subsequent affair was turbulent and untimely in its excess, She had an odd propensity for trysting in abandoned ghetto houses and often struck me and tried to stab. We could say the threat that 1 out of 100 men might harm a girl sometimes works in the reverse. If she hadn't reduced him to a domesticated chore, she rarely will play the role of the psychopath herself, and I am at pains to mention how I have armed myself with a .38 revolver, which I hold against my temple each night before I take a bath. Regardless, I do miss her, wherever she may be lurking to plan her recompense in the hollows of her now unfortunately far-right extremist associates who have been known to circle my house on occasion. Please enjoy.
One relatively high ceiling in literature near the traffic cone dildoed roof of it is, if you're lucky, and I'm being generous, in vain. 100 people a year might see a thing you did. Okay, what's next regarding the planet in your operation thereupon? Coast into a topicality sufficient for going viral online? Quip about the news, or platter your heart, its non-slip grip empathies liked in droves, shake every expensive hand until you smell like a billfold? No, be hip and empathetic where your craft is concerned, whatever fashion dictates, subconsciously or not. Henpeck a contemporary for attention, pick the snot out of your myth. Looking delicious in New York, up your hype's view count, pitch yourself as the next ennobled puppy hiding behind its ears like picket signs that stink. Ring up the Daily Planet every 5 minutes like Ginsberg did right after he forgot how to write. Becoming recognized is quite tear-jerking for some, however coincidentally doled out they may be. This is a trade you whip your life into a dismal close perfecting, and the only virgin your sacrifice gets rewarded with is you. You with your rubber ducky in a lake fire masturbating into the lint of your pocket, soggy in the socket. Serafima Spigotsky is a writer from Russia. She has experienced trauma, the likes of which few have seen and many more these days will covet. In the real estate of victimhood, she is sitting pretty, not because her scarred-up face looks counterintuitively scrumptious, every man's type of mutilated dream girl, but because she plies her poems outside of a fucking confessional booth, never appealing to the cheap sainthood lionizing so many of the baby-hided, talentless bigwigs who so presently abound. In other words, no audience to be found. Her name means the one that burns, ironic considering the vile specifics of the atrocities she has been subjected to. She's been fallaciously emboldened, exploited, and abandoned by the feminist policies that left her all-encompassing and vulnerable enough to be assaulted in the first place. She Me Too'd the wrong demographic. Perhaps, in the parlance of our times, before I begin drooling over your tempestuous experiences like a clickbaiting shill, before you win the victimhood sweepstakes on my dime, let me assure you that my audience is 97% me trying to fix minor technical errors within the recording. As I'm sure you're aware, your looks are fetishized. As I'm sure you're aware, your looks are fetishized a still dominant amount, whereas the goal is to put your slender body aside with its accrued fixations and fixings and get red, just so that a small living may occur. Had I not always only been autoerotically beige in the same room with partners feigning interest for reasons no one cares to contemplate across my wasted life, had any of them possessed the sense of smell, a deficiency which enabled my every darling to be evolutionarily advanced enough to avoid chemical connection like a cyborg paid by the dinner, not that my pheromones aren't intrinsically abject. If I still believed in sex, you could call me a bashful flirt.
This is because God threw acid in your face when you were born, Wichly. I had to find mine fresh squeezed from bowels of Muslim hell. Lucky for you, I enter husbandry with a punching bag. No living person keeps their wet work cold enough to please me.
Are you so tortured by your violations that they now compose the entirety of your identity? If you've picked a genital or two off that tree, and do they perform a felicitous worldview beyond the weaponry of self-defense in your nervous system as it erratically cycles? Have you managed, like many delusional civilians of my country, to refrigerate your perception of reality via a petulant sense of broadband ostrich-level innocence far past the age of 7, maintaining the audacity to demand that everyone else fit your misconception?
I maintain somatic fortitude surpassing most men in your country. I am a woman often cowered before most likable situation. Sense of purpose resides in many of your overpriced gyms.
Do you find violence takes on an arousing resonance in retrospect? This has been my experience, though my jumping's pale in comparison.
Not so much with grain rape. Too crowded for a particular memory. Surpassing 100 pounds of pressure exerted within uterus will render it into busted seesaw, a backyard for dead semen. I insert smaller series of needles into pelvis to experience shutter mechanism of 1 hour orgasm. I do this twice a year, like dentist visit. Other humans remain inconsequential.
What do you make of the current state of American culture?
Straw Man came to life high off his own rabies. Then scarecrows fucked their fowl to bad disco. Who knew that so many an infant donning Wi-Fi pacifiers could so adamantly deny the science of their flaw? I like having my cunt taxidermied into a skyline by passing eyes of each poor and doting male. What dizzying lies I am told about human rights.
Which lies are those?
That they exist.
What makes you say they don't?
Such feeble-minded indulgences rarely cross the ocean, too abstract for rafts. It is okay that my rape in the street by several men who, for my complying docility, severely mutilated my face with acid after hanging a sharp rock off my crotch. This is okay that this monstrosity you wish you could compete, but never could arouses you? How do you say, no biggie? I am merely angry I am not given follow-up message for date number 2.
Well, you know, I can only dream of a girl if she picks a nice time of the day to defecate, because if she relieves her bowels without coordination, how can I map us into a relationship?
At night, I'm calling Wichly's voicemail. No secret matriarchy would bother declaring itself. That's how you know we're in one. Then hanging up. You dream to read my piss like a crystal ball if I allow.
Can your piss land anywhere with accuracy after what happened?
You're telling me?
Oh.
My aim is fetching?
All right.
I am expert striker. Strike 1 is warning. Strike 2, you lose consciousness. Then I have run of your mill.
Sounds quite nice, actually. As a prospective citizen, not that you have an acceptable point of view or sympathy with refugees anymore, not that you yourself are here half legally, but having in your youth toured with your own band, heavily influenced by Pussy Riot, participating in protests against Putin, finally escaping arrest into Sweden, where you were then attacked by the very classification you meant to embolden, hoist on your own petard in a way, jumped out of your unwelcomed, wide-eyed patronage about how humanity works, or tries to. Do you think this will affect your future citizenship here?
If you declare yourself a citizen, your art is invalid.
As in crippled?
Like how you are breaking off your frog-sized chode inside the back end of your self-sodomite Boris. I lack the PR of this pussy riot. How accurate their initials are. This dollar store bravery from toy capitalist, anti-capitalist agents, and it got me diddled mostly against my imperious will. Those cunts own functioning cunts and have hustled for much stroking off too. Did you know humanity is a great cause worthy of coupling in a mosh pit? Please have died pre-uterus. Please be a sperm who did not place.
Would you call yourself Islamophobic in regards to what happened?
If more than two people are in agreement, if even one, if more than two people are visually in cahoots, anything similar, I'm wishing for them endless pain. I fear only what I have been made capable of.
Could this point of view not inadvertently go beyond how it is easily misclassified as right-wing and back towards something globalist akin to the solipsism technology promotes and uses to control us?
The false courage of picking a side in politics, smart method for recruitment in either direction, such meek challenges, coy appeals to civic vanity, my art and my personal ability to damage the male in his head if he is provoking, these are my concerns. Likely I could shove a chandelier up your cavity just for small talk. You would not fit sporting new alphabets inside this idea. Shall I turn you multifaceted? I support no cause beyond the reach of my blade. Prove to me my politics, and I begin striking on repeat. Besides, Mr. Muslim, if you decapitate me, make sure to leave extra room on the pike for my smile.
May I buy you a drink?
No one over 200 pounds or under 90 pounds is allowed at my funeral. May the dead worms die out of your bloat ass and follow your swimming into each vowel you then pass. Alfred Wichly died to the death of bullet between his double chin. R.I.P. fuckboy! Each knuckle I am cracking will leave further puzzlement for your corner.
What a vinegary custom for the snarkily informed. What supreme tickle judo, this trick of further slandering anyone impugned for their privilege, a well-intentioned but speciously and lopsidedly applied pop concept, as joint wallowers in the victimhood they detest, simply because the petty censure this delicate theory promulgates is ever gainsaid in self-defense. Not every expostulation has a fucking charge to file! Sometimes you haphazardly adopt the arrogant tone of the fool discoursing their tinsel-clitted, flower-breathed reckoning in your face, spewing it uninvited on the porch of your platform. Must each vexation require the service of a microscope? How futile and regrettable to debate the reach of your own ancestral fault, the forbidden fruit concerning the surplus of your likeness, as if a source of pride were to be found in anything so pandemic. The Marxist ballet, for lack of a less outdated economist, of pseudo-inverse Christianity peekaboos behind its mask, corpulent and subprehensile, a filial blouse of democracy online, ambushing us with 24-hour piety, more dogmatic bilge excused as a headline. Behold two flavors of domination encountered regularly by all walks of life, because everyone rubs their stool together in a circle. So much crossover in the reek. Such wind chime oppressions, shrug-offable faux pas, and counter-appeals to collectivist guilt, exhibited by both star-crusted ends of the same opposition, the same hand-holding oligarchs and czarinas of the cheap seats. Persecution is in season, authority the shared goal of La La Land. A right
type bootstrap alpha power individual tells you about you to you openly in order to conscript the scraps, shakily adhering what you may have neurotically passed off as a personality into their service. Often their tough love is a sugar pill declaring itself with accusations of oversensitivity, but rest assured, the joke is on you. This country loves to add insult to injury under the guise of first aid. The worst thing either side of any political argument says about the other is always the round table truth. My task is to help myself, not to puke every time I peer out the window at this culture. Verily, an unattainable goal. Granted, not every hand that feeds you leaves you fist-fucked, even if it feels that way. That feeling is just life! On the other proselytizing fuckabout, airhead lefties perform a theoretical bow to a coterie of self-sucked, media-handout, virtue-funded cowards, operating under the insane assumption that the Holy Spirit of racial bias instilled in me has somehow affronted you by my very presence alone, and must therefore be atoned across the arts at my expense. We're a zeitgeist in default, and our art reflects it. You're fucking up the equilibrium of my self-hatred by making it corporate, by imposing paper cup limitations on the reach of such hatred, because it will gladly include you and all comers the second it is invoked. Otherwise, alongside the main statistic of humanity, which is this: a minority of screeching people in one pie slice overwork at making life insufferable, the big middle, those who are utterly indifferent and leave little impact, inconsequential to your doings and good for all, and finally, the rare and increasingly temporary minority of people worth 2 seconds of your time. From this state of affairs, I am to be tasked with the responsibility of any nation for its crimes. How irreparably you have underestimated my disgust with life itself. And all it takes is a single glance for me to include you in there most viciously. No matter what your close tags may or may not read, or whichever brand of mom cleared the meconium from your nostrils. The whole of humanity is still gargling its meconium. Hatred is the religion behind my ability to see. To call this feeling covetous resentment, symptomatic of Ursula culture of today, would imply I thought there was anything you could hand me to repair it. If your message is that my every tiny gain is a forgery on your shoulders because there is a hive majority in its hue fucked into its own cunt, you can hold hands and cut each other's grass all day, rich or poor, silver spoon or self-made, artless alike. Through practice or idealization, both camps ignore the death they have involved themselves in avoiding, under the aesthetics murdering busywork of progress. My guest today, much to my chagrin, is called Horatio Skimlock, so to speak, born into anonymity. He is the doler out of an airy type of Art Deco poem designed with the ethereal intent to scoff at anything unapproved of by his clique, a sub-posy poser literature somewhere beyond Vatic in the Vatic versus Civic discord, bristling with gamma-wave mediocrities that would shame an academic. No grounding, no anchoring, above the mess, never of it, better than the simple rest, ultimately just as plain in his relaxed arraignment against ink at large. No there, sans l'affaire. Clauses wallpaper the page, detached modifiers with amateurish and uncontrolled amounts of layering and unintended implication, an L plus A plus N plus succotash language experiment, unmoored margin to margin, arranged and curated, never rendered, clouding paper with the merest gravity of its author's halitosis. Politics by the syllable. Most of my questions to you, sir, will be quotes from better authors, because I suspect you read fashionably, if at all, On the rare occasions you sober up enough to clock in or miss your mother, not for the love of reading, but to ingratiate yourself in the ever-shrinking scene of lingual hound dogs for cool points at your next record exchange, to celebrate the pansies on your 10-year-old life partner's training bra, you mentally incompetent parasite of the brochure, you groupie and a half shell. First question. In passing a mirror, does your beauty ever strike you unawares? Your astringencies are kept fellow in the tune we unite inside. Penciled in DNAs of the animation, no one can grope thoroughly enough to form a thought. I know your Wichly thoughts before you think them, because the eraser marks are made so prevalent. You will note that there is a .38 revolver in my fist. I will not raise it, but as I am 3 for 3 with being struck by guests, I suggest scrupulous movements. As you can only inflate your abstractions due to a lack of talent, men like you usually form cults to fill that gap, becoming the practice you failed to produce. Helium boy, warlock, chode. How many obscure religions are in your purse, you superior acting power junkie? May I remind you, quaffed solicitor, the gun is loaded. You are nothing but a symphony of claw marks. Shut the fuck up! Literary stunt, social gathering versifier, language mimic, fragment peddler, polarity surfboard, ineffable clot, comment troll with a published book or two. Whistler, the painter, put these words in the mouths of his many critics. Whistler, therefore, is judgment far from us. Neither doth justice overtake us. We wait for light, but behold obscurity. For brightness, but we walk in darkness. We grope for the wall like the blind, and we grope as if we had no eyes. We stumble at noonday as in night. We roar all like bears. Whistler snatched a farthing out of his thread, pitched like a bullet at you and yours. Perhaps that's you, an off-brand gray hid beneath his mother's cowl. More about you, as you would often tell me about me to me. Your turn now. According to the genius Whistler, compared to which you are a barnacle's flea bite, Whistler really had you down and many flouting others. This is from Whistler's The Gentle Art of Making Enemies. It's available on the internet, Project Gutenberg and the like. Whistler. So art has become foolishly confounded with education. That all should be equally qualified. Art happens. No hovel is safe from it. No prince may depend upon it. The vastest intelligence cannot bring it about, and puny efforts to make it universal end in quaint comedy and coarse farce. This is as it should be, and all attempts to make it otherwise are due to the eloquence of the ignorant, the zeal of the conceited. The boundary line is clear. Far from me to propose to bridge it over, that the pestered people be pushed across. No! I would save them from further fatigue. I would come to their relief, and would lift from their shoulders this incubus of art. Why, after centuries of freedom from it, and indifference to it, should it now be thrust upon them by the blind, until wearied and puzzled they know no longer how they shall eat or drink, how they shall sit or stand, and wherewithal they shall clothe themselves, without afflicting art? Vulgarity, under whose fascinating influence the many have elbowed the few, and the gentle circle of art swarms with the intoxicated mob of mediocrity, whose leaders prate and counsel and call aloud where the gods once spoke in whisper. And now from their midst the dilettante stalks abroad. The amateur is loosed. The voice of the aesthete is heard in the land, and catastrophe is upon us. The meddler beckons the vengeance of the gods, and ridicule threatens the fair daughters of the land. and there are curious converts to the weird cult, in which all instinct for attractiveness, all freshness and sparkle, all woman's winsomeness, is to give way to a strange vocation for the unlovely, and this desecration in the name of the graces. Shall this gaunt, ill-at-ease, distressed, abashed mixture of mauvaise honte and desperate assertion call itself artistic, and claim cousinship with the artist who delights in the dainty, the sharp, bright gaiety of beauty? No! 1,000 times no! Here are no connections of ours. We will have nothing to do with them. Forced to seriousness, that emptiness may be hidden. They dare not smile, while the artist in fullness of heart and head is glad and laughs aloud and is happy in his strength, and is merry at the pompous pretension, the solemn silliness that surrounds him. For art and joy go together, with bold openness and high head and ready hand, fearing not, and dreading no exposure. Know, then, all beautiful women, that we are with you. Pay no heed, we pray you, to this outcry of the unbecoming, this last plea of the plain. It concerns you not. Your own instinct is near the truth. If we never so spotlessly, still may she turn her back upon us. Countless indeed, the horde of pretenders. But she knew them not. A teeming, seething, busy mass, whose virtue was industry, and whose industry was vice. Their names go to fill the catalogue of the collection at home, of the gallery abroad, for the delectation of the bagman and the critic. Therefore have we cause to be merry, and to cast away all care, resolved that all is well, as it ever was, and that it is not meet that we should be cried at, and urged to take measures. Enough have we endured of dullness. Surely are we weary of weeping, and our tears have been cozened from us falsely, for they have called out woe when there was no grief, and alas, where all is fair. Art is upon the town. This man Whistler, this genius, you have made a postmodern hipster kitty mask of his hues. If it is that I am too much your pimp in the afterlife, which is now, I need no podium or medium to convey. You goddamn millennials like yourselves too fucking much. This is why you're all so aesthetically in a coma. And stop talking with that accent! I have many BB gun pellets in the salve of my rhetoric. And you will know this by the very nature of my... They should have sewn you shut inside your mother, because that is the housing from which you echo. Embark on the arduous process of removing your finger from your asshole and hear anyone else on the matter. The necessary advancement of style into vulgar naturalism came and went. We don't need to pointillistically ribbit anymore to revolt against it. We can incorporate both. Take from either as one sees fit, like an artist, not a self-satisfied, domineering priest. Try Mr. Havelock Ellis, the old professional cuck. He's laying a track from Proust to Joyce, Norris, and the American tilt of vulgarizing language. A stilted style of centuries past breaks down, gets dirty. Now we can build it back up, smudged with gold. And what prevents that is these theory-headed abstractionists, inflexible in your noisy misamplifications, your algebraic Jackson McLowe, John McCage revenge molesting of the arts. Havelock Ellis said, astronomer and grammarian alike can only come in at the end to give the generalized description of what usually happens in the respective fields it pleases them to explore. When a new comet, cosmic or literary, enters the sky, it is their descriptions which have to be readjusted, not the comet. There seems to be no more pronounced mark of the decadence of a people and its literature than a servile and rigid subserviency to rule. It can only make for ossification, for ankylosis, for petrification, all the milestones on the road of death. In every age of democratic plebeianism, where each man thinks he is a good writer as any other, and takes his laws from the others, having no laws of his own nature, it is down this steep path that men in a flock inevitably run. This is the method you have befouled, sir. Ellis then references a Spratt book by Greenslit on Glanville, or vice versa, on the dumbing down of language. Cartesian influence on English prose style was enforced by the Royal Society. I'll say it again, the Royal Society exacted, quote, exacted from its members a close, naked, natural way of speaking, positive expressions, a native easiness, bringing all things as near the mathematic plainness as they can. The Society passed a resolution to reject all amplifications, digressions, and swellings of style. Either writing style can degrade itself, this is me talking, not just plain heads, not just as you have harmed my love of wordplay with your spillage, your denture-style rule-breaking can also stiffen up. According to Ellis, I like to skip this part, but you need to hear it. Ellis is sharp enough to contrast the dumb language accusation with the following assessment, finding merit in the simpler approach as well. Havelock Ellis. All the writers who influence those who come after them have done so by the same method. They have thrown aside the awkward and outworn garments of speech. They have woven a simpler and more familiar speech, able to express subtleties or audacities that before seemed inexpressible. That was once done in English verse by Cowper and Wordsworth, in English prose by Addison and Lamb. That has been done in French today by Proust and in English by Joyce. When a great writer, like Carlyle or Browning, creates a speech of his own, which is too clumsy to be flexible and too heavy to be intimate, he may arouse the admiration of his fellows, but he leaves no traces on the speech of the men who come after him. Sounds good to me, by the way. Did you listen to that, though? Did you listen to it? You need to hear it more than I did. Or were you busy floating past in a yoga stance, drinking apple cider? Clearly, you fine-tuned doggerel, hammered below the spear. Try Adorno for your chauvinism in revolt, which is what I taught to all. Adorno said, the feminine character is a negative imprint of domination, but therefore equally bad. Whatever is in the context of bourgeoisie delusion called nature is merely the scar of social mutilation. If the psychoanalytical theory is correct that women experience their physical constitution as a consequence of castration, the neurosis gives them an inkling of the truth. The woman who feels herself a wound when she bleeds knows more about herself than the one who imagines herself a flower because that suits her husband. The lie consists not only in the claim that nature exists where it has been tolerated and adopted, but what passes for nature in civilization is by its very substance furthest from all nature, its own self-chosen object. The femininity which appeals to instinct is always exactly what every woman has to force herself by violence, masculine violence, to be, a she-man. One need only have perceived as a jealous male how such feminine women have their femininity at their fingertips, deploying it just where needed, flashing their eyes, using their impulsiveness to know how things stand with the sheltered unconscious, unmarred by intellect. Just this unscathed purity is the product of the ego of worship of intellect, which is why it submits so unresistingly to the reality principle of that rational order. Without a single exception, female natures are conformist. The fact that Nietzsche's scrutiny stopped short of them, that he took over a second-hand and unverified image of feminine nature from the Christian civilization that he otherwise so thoroughly mistrusted, finally brought this through under the sway, after all, of bourgeoisie society. He fell for the fraud of saying the feminine when talking of women, hence the perfidious advice not to forget the whip. The liberation of nature would be to abolish its self-fabrication. Glorification of the feminine character implies the humiliation of all who bear it. What do you think of in regards to the raid inside your body, Wichly? I think that meant little but sounded nice, which is fine, but what you, specifically you, need is Reverend C.C. Colton, who said this specifically about you. Colton, some men who know that they are great are so very haughty withal and insufferable that their acquaintance discover their greatness only by the tax of humility, which they are obliged to pay as the price of their friendship. Such characters are as tiresome and disgusting in the journey of life as rugged roads are to the weary traveler, which he discovers to be turnpikes only by the toll. Colton also said this: the sun should not set upon our anger, neither should he rise upon our confidence. And I think some tryingly cryptic homophobes like to cough on the fumes in their closet. Some latently diddled boys got dad issues across their reading program and go on to make a career out of their reflection, then tell me it's my fault. Is it my responsibility, because I'm a tad fucked up, to wrangle every half-wit hanger-on in the lit game? Keep showing bravado in the face of the suicide you weren't ballsy enough to gift the world. Here is the sought-after exchange you introduced yourself to get. Don't take it as a warning shot. I disappear. What the fuck? Where'd he go? I reappear. What sick optical trickery is afoot here, my haughty dandy scenester? What is this racism against gravity? Here, pull a rabbit out of this! I disappear. God damn it! Hold still, you little son of a bitch! I hesitate to call you a varmint, but do die!
My audience is still come, born frowning all over the feet of what propped them inside, straddling the interior meatus to prevent exit, coughed, bouncing off this doorstop life. I make light of duality at large, because all I care to see is the canvas I'm about to mar, the platter from which my phlegm will dip its ink. Where the rabble withdraws, I am always willing. Point is, I'm an escaped cancer my mother is catching up on, a chatty tumor gelled into a man, a spoon-fed cyst. I got Judas's say-so in my silver. Thank you for your consideration. My guest today gets high off the trade of talking, whereas I do it as a fallback after having had to awaken day in and day out. His smile could light up a colostomy pouch. Chad Scarlelli haunts the literary community with a tale or two from your favorite corporate headshot of an author, usually concerning their wardrobe and how many pumps their parents took to rot them. The agents who summoned this man pale in comparison to what, I'm not sure. The fact that his single book was on a major press 20 years ago confounds the laws of being born white. Chad, may I call you Chadster? If I say I admire a mixed writing technique, it does not subscribe me to the promotion of any deeper of a melting pot, yea or nay. I say that because the left and right extremists who doxed me ended up killing each other on my porch. Can't dox a kamikaze. But you are much braver, going all the way progressive in front of a number of writers. What sort of fucking value do you place on humanity? Oh, the utmost, of course. You kinda make me wanna say sorry for your loss on sight. Didn't follow your intro, but it seems rather assiduously composed. I feel like there's a path to redemption with your name on it. It just hasn't been located yet. But as a writer who only writes haiku the length of his erection, I want to tell you about my dog's name. Spare me, O Faye. I see in your eyes the same dead look the media subscribed us all, nothing brighter. You partake of the dopamine avalanche? True, sometimes I want to see how the cunts are clucking. What in the name of context is anything you say about? Let me interrupt me. I was born near the Grand Canyon. Now listen, that's not my fault. My tan is permanent. I rub it to know I'm real. Understand, though, that if you keep speaking hate to me, my hair gel will malfunction. Are you a male feminist for a living?
I hesitate to proclaim myself anything, not that I'm not in total favor of feminism, but I'm aware of the juxtaposition of male intent as it is so wantonly declared. Man, guys really suck, huh? Not to get edgy on you, can we swear? How often do you fuck? And I don't just mean your wife and kids. Let me turn you back around in that question, haha. Try not to speak to me as if you've established any credit, okay? I used to fuck like the hotel was on fire. Now, however, I admit I've burned more than a few physical bridges. Well, I like to think my underwear have meaning the tighter my tailor takes them. You know? My children grow in size and in number by the month. How so many so soon? With one spouse, excuse me, partner, who I celebrate daily when Obama lets me. I didn't say licks me. I'm not implying she has a trick uterus and a lab for eggs because we're also close to 50. We were born astride the same astrology. The horns below our navels got tangled on the fairway. What's your firstborn do for a living? My firstborn lives with her mother in the house of a professional therapist who is one of these men who had his circumcision professionally reversed. They all helped him stretch it, sleeved back in. I am indifferent concerning any of their survivals. Great to hear, and I'm sure they love you for it. Why do I concern myself with bagels? Why are you the French toast of the left-hand path? You'll hear why after this. After what? We should start a soup kitchen together. You're a real soup kitchen starter-upper. The hell you say. I live on the borrowed property of an ailing progenitor. I'm a rabidly bad caretaker, more neglectful than malicious. However, the cats who infest my space with their characteristic perma-piss, to them I bear ill will. I will push tacks into their little eyes, round flat tops shining where they once could see. Imagine each of them backing up in blind terror, indescribable, unforeseen pain, screeching as I dig the tails out of their asses with a hammer, wrench it through their sense of balance, spin them in a bag, to make sure, dump them out in cleaning fluids, chart their gait as it deteriorates. But I don't know, don't you find that killing, like music, is too universal? The catharsis of its performance is merely physical. Not that relics last, but there is no palpable enough relic to keep off of a corpse. The relic is reduced to a singular trophy, no paragraphs to court your time with, and I don't esteem humanity enough, dead or alive, to get my druthers from enforcing its decay. I wish I contained the moxie to end a thing or 10. Great topic for an artist, but not a great art itself, murder. I'm used to more me on me. I'm used to being of better assistance. They used to have to build a bunk bed at the gym. That's how strong they need to be, those who whiten my teeth for me. Your nonsense won't do, coming from so pearly a source. I've been to heaven, and the door locks both ways, Al. Ever settle down in the Dow? Get a wonky broker to lend a hand? Ever think the internet and your ilk upon it have converted the aristocratic fear of being perceived as gauche and overconfident, this king's speech of over-enunciated virtue, into a conspiracy, and that conspiracy grew legs and ruined you, with its self-fulfilling prophecy of navel-gazing guilt vampires in a vain attempt to escape vanity due to the fact that the worst potentiality always ends up true, and everyone's shittiest assertion about their nemesis across the board is just reality? Maybe repeat this in the morning. Who is saying they speak the truth the loudest, and how deaf will that make me? Foist your agendas into my bonkers evocations, my fumbling digestion at the horrors of play. Goddamn, man, you haven't blinked since you got here. If I were a robot, every day would be a staring contest between a screwdriver and my screws. You're too overt. Does not compute. Try this on for size. Try the size of my house on for size. Consider Sam Harris's mistake. He's another of these professional intellectuals. He qualifies badness. Mistake number one. The universe, as we see it, he insists, is not supposedly, allegedly every living thing is not forced down a non-stop tunnel of the worst physical torment imaginable. And this is proof there's a spectrum from how bad things could be to the middle ground we occupy. But any grade school sadist could tell you stopping on something repeatedly is not how you wreck it proper. First you have to show the mark its own potential. Stuff them full of fluffy. Leave a little recovery time, so they misremember the next upcoming interval of pain and how that damage will reinvent them. Stall the impact with a shard of hope. Make them glimmer so their fall is coated, a little frosting in the IV. Then the torture is exquisite. An expertise for endurance flavors top-shelf misery, so piquant. We are in the scary place. No scale could represent how badly we exist. Don't tell me what is, or I won't welcome you to the realm of the not. Check my math, friend, behind every demand for a smile. They want you full of hope, so there's a path of blood behind the deer. It is lit by the wheezing breath of screens. Precisely! And the nastier you signify, at your expense or not, the more shrill your inversely connoted shout for morality to your elite and minuscule fellowship of artisans. So who is pious now? Why don't you sit on my lap till Christmas stalls out? Why do you despise your disguise? Excuse me, are you Satan herself? Don't gender the nether, boombox head! Where they breed me, Satan was just another servant walloping the iron tit. Well, let me sign a contract to get a fucking break with the page here. I'm willing. Pluck a pleasant sentiment from my purse, bitchly. Maybe I will. Go ahead. Well, I think I will. I'll say something nice. Then I'll be sicker than the hair matted to the back of your thighs. Tell me an affirmation. Gift me one, right now. Your likes are in limbo. Perhaps a casual or poignant fact about your day today. Okay, I will. Go ahead. I am. Do go on. I'm a bit inexperienced. Shall I guide your hand? Shall I lend you my paw? One positive exhortation, baby steps. Who programmed you?
The globe halted. Reverse trajectory a minute. Out I crawled. Bolts, sizzling lava, cooling down in the effront you call air, yelping wads of hair by the throatful. I won't stop until every hand is held, until the music blaring from each porta potty is a new universal income. I keep my marionettes fatter than their strings, slide butter down when they climb. You think this started with technology? I stroked my graying beard atop the first wheel as it rolled. Now you receive a hit upside your head for playing guessing games with an inconsequential sentience.
Ow! God damn it! Will you stop that and pass my resume out of your bowels for me so I can share its whiff with the entire offices of your kind?
Bow out, Wichly. Bow out. Bow out. Bow out. Bow out. Bow
You're my audience, and I'll keep it real with you. My middle name is Martin, and I'm endlessly thankful to my family. I'm so glad I have an audience, husband pillowed around me. Y'all stick by my side through these harshest of times. I know I sound bitter on occasion, but rest assured, I'm as dependent upon your attention as an Olympic chamber pot. I love you. I love all your little noses. I want to abscond with each of them, caulk the cartilage along the top rung of my shower, and never masturbate again. Think of me as a spouse and a half, reliant but challenging, dignified. I'll never sell out, but I value your feedback if you feel that I have. Yesterday I woke up hungover and had a bowl of, sugarless cereal or something, and I meant it. Then I cleaned and walked my cats, having knelt inside their litter, mouth ajar. I love you, and I love all cats. I would never wait out a woman's friendship and fall upon her as she slept. Men are the war causers and the ambulatory cake mix of everything evil. Don't forgive us. Still, I love you. Are you nudged into warmth by this admission? I apologize for having yelled in episodes past. I didn't mean to foster oral anxiety. I don't think I've wished anyone harm since preschool, and perhaps we're finally there. I love you and I want what's best for you, but I worry about you. I just want to pick you up by the ankles and swallow what upsets you, link by link, until a heart poops out and envelops us. Snug but not suffocating. I want to grow old ensconced with you for the joy of having had your ear a minute, or none. We'll eat our way out of the marshmallow and deem the resulting elementary stoppage a tribute, the puckering smooch of a chocolate wand uniting me and you in our lunch in synchronized bites. This episode is dedicated to Brenda Ann Spencer. Around 2013, due to all economized social contexts having been bent over by the phone company for the 1967 cinematic masterpiece The President's Analyst, an unadorned lexicon of the thumb was decreed from on high, eroding its every media with a minus sign IQ. The artisans of chaos, gentrified across a few short decades from scholars to doctrinal goons, were heaped into mere theory, another corrupt politic, systemized by living, each movement ultimately an incompetent tradition, each utopian plot became an heirloom. The arrogance of the status quo sprawled out into the counterculture, which was already a facade, but at least somewhat aesthetically competent, infesting eccentrics with its commiseration. The handheld power of everyone's inane victimhood got repackaged as a nostalgia. Instead of viewing the history of literary advancement as tools by which to perfect one's voice, the past as palette, we swatted ourselves into magisterial brain children pawned off in every direction by our own parvenu abstractions, hairballed ear to ear, by dogmatists so fat no one can find them outside of an allegation, some copiously astute circle jerk slander. All people can do is belong. Literature had, by then, stripped itself to the barest inkling of a comedy show and was taking to the internet via a continuation of LiveJournal a new narrative snugglefest of nakedly intimate appeals to our most conceited sympathies. Originally, alt-lit was a comically ironic, punk-inspired fuck you, using refactored bastardizations of Gordon Lish's editorial technique,
rigged into whimsy, a Richard Linklater hangout snapping back against the death knell of postmodern maximalist novels and the implication of elitism feigned upon them. This movement, as happens with movements, was reduced by its coverage to a vulnerability, then worse to a pop-psych festival of guidance counselors, and finally in 2014, almost a decade of maturation got brought to a shuddering half-wit close by sexual prohibitionist teetotalers. Twitter feminist hit squads, suspiciously timing this blitz with the release of the movie Gone Girl, an impactful and widely discussed Lifetime Channel mystery movie and novel at the time, based around a, spoilers, rather extreme false accusation against a smug husband, coattailed in perhaps as PR, perhaps as Andrea Dworkin's legacy, de-revolutionized into a temperance union, Valerie Solanas as a watered-down prosecuting attorney, Peggy McIntosh's smegmatic knapsack. Her name is Peggy, and she squatted on Du Bois against his will. Bell hooks in capital letters, the Guerrilla Girls banana splitting in their metropolitan allegiances, rewriting the laws of sex to be government-friendly, an arrest for profit, hell has no fury ad infinitum, and good for you. Unending hatred isn't just for dudes. Maybe we're too overt at it. Power was, of course, at play in every direction the second the units started moving and the brands started shooing. Art got cannibalized in the name of the same feelings that might have inspired it a generation ago into a frowny-faced politics of heart, a conceptual blip for the post office reward against carrying a dong. A feminist separatist scheme led by terminal victims who flatter the concept of therapy. But an estrogen mob will always be sexy despite itself. Baptized by technology to record and repost every private piece of vague sleaze as a serious public assault against anyone on the rise, subsequently hiding behind that profitable accusation in your crusade to avenge a historical oppression that the very same soft idiot you are destroying probably agrees with you about, and, by the way, had nothing to do with beyond one ancient urge to hump. How many scalps can fit inside a pussy, and how fast will they be donated? Hilarious. 99% of saying hello is a catcall now, arrestable and detestable. Libel them by the urge. Even your frivolous vengeance has to flatter your curves. Hopefully humanity goes defunct. Scratch starting over from scratch. Take the screwfly hemlock of this campaign and get extinct. We've converted the last remaining freaks into the final ad hominem religion. Even our mass shooters are sponsored. I'll save my sex for prison, thank you. If anything I gain can be taken from me by this stupid process, I didn't want that shit in the first place. Include my shit-suck life across the entirety of that equation. Perhaps we sullied the forum of our next-gen moral panic because we long for the majesty of the 1980s satanic panic. Teardrop for the retro because men are now so wobbly and syncopal. Not that technological advancement hasn't been degenderizing us since... Well, what do we want anyway? Another Dark Ages? That's the difference between a naughty, ingrate emotion and a comfy air mattress. Divide and conquer by the niche, yet, sorry to say, the coordination against unhireable boys is barely exhausting. The supposed criminals your hysterical accusations left us with are as harmlessly feminine as each catfishing Lolita faux victim herself. Not that the buffoonish controversies of yore weren't so boring I wanted to piss my pants on purpose. Not that any alt purveyor liked me a second, not that I place on the radar of any scene. Not that they didn't mock me with the bravado of a purse dog. Not that any of them spread their androgynous millennial clutch wide open for me. Not that they weren't so free of atmosphere their dinghy sank long ago. Far as I cared, I was really enamored for a month in 2006, but a couple of iconoclasts were housed within the marketed cool, the patronizingly hip. The cockily unbroken did mistake itself on occasion past the counterculture and into some serious art. Not every single get-together in the arts ends up a LAN party of multiplayer gamers online walking guns back to their base in an awkward loop of reselection for a swindled arsenal at the beginning of each round. All involved aren't necessarily ghosting through the beta run death cam of a console to inform their friends of your position, camping in the rafters and typing woot at the newbies. Yes, I've been playing circa 2002 video games because I can't get hired anywhere. Not counting the car wash, where my position remains on tenterhooks. One's 20s is nifty for a hello or two before you quickly, or not too quickly, devastatingly for you, realize what you always thought but didn't learn for sure, that there is no point to living near, or communicating with, or connecting to another body if you're a fucking artist. That's what a book is for, but a drink or two with a pal or two is nice on occasion. My guest today is the undeclared declarative founder of the alts. Chow Sang sounds like if a cheetah could play dead inside its own voice. He's buried somewhere on the spectrum if you believe cyborgs require funerals, and was born 1 million times out of the internet's dingle-buried flume, sporting the enigmatic visage of a clinician, reliant on the nonchalant amount of dope to rid the world of hate and art. The bereft delegate of the opiate epidemic, some kind of alpha yogi drenched in top-shelf groupie fluids, hence the object of much jealousy, and nevertheless unavoidably a talent, less the trickster, always up front, maybe the most benevolent and moral figure in literature, albeit not entirely defanged if crossed, because if anyone has your best interests in mind, never absolve them for it. Like the Maloo he helped usher in, pity equals power. Any verbalized lack of sympathy becomes an effective counterforce to disrupt the balance of one's assailant, this millennial jujitsu. And who is more pitiable than millennials? The attempt to normalize perversity does not detract from the art of that genre. It, in fact, pushes the boundary from collar to leash so we can snap our neck for exercise, like autoerotic filigree. This century is cruising for a bruising, more worldwide genocide for nostalgia's sake. We're an unpreened mass, but as it happens, things got so bleak a genocide would be pointless. Why bother killing a walking corpse? Diverted by a manifesto a minute activism as conceptual situationist piffle, the spatialism of causes as they go through McDonald's court systems and the testimony of any potential mate. Why not support a Weltanschauung based off overdosing on bonbons, because all this fox in the henhouse male support garners primo cunt? Not that you need help in that department, but why not lend a helping hand on the commission of a readership? The question implies that I encourage the lending of false sympathy for my benefit as a writer or public figure, and that benefit is related to the times. Yes, that is the question. Are you translating out my ever euphemistic bent so the language can wear a uniform to the universal gulag? Or is it the more you repeat someone's logic back to them with a flat affectation, the more ridiculous it sounds, which is a fallacy because if you repeat anything enough times, the inconsequential nature of any effort will evaporate the thought regardless.
Yes. What is the question?
I asked the question. Let's not feign incomprehension like we're autists in a chat room in dire need of literal clarification every 10 seconds.
Oh. People will always act on their assumptions about whatever you tell them your meaning is, despite the fact of the situation. My writing is a reaction to that. It was never promoted as an antidote. Some have found the technique of value, the voice of an outcast female juxtaposed by an editorial dominant male, from Ford Maddox Ford to Lish. That's how I started. But an adherence to the times will contain contradictions, voluntarily or not. I believe you know about layering and haven't compromised the concept of masculinity with a willful subordination to anything overtly literary.
Yes, I see. Do you experience time?
Sometimes. A clock is a type of melodrama.
Melodrama? Oughtn't I be pinched in my lachrymosity? Your dulcet tones have filled the world with cribs, deeming everyone trapped inside a future Hitler. I think Gawker invented you to troll a branch of itself into literature before it performed transcendence into the mainframe. The legal system is your rattler. You are a spike on the mace you've wobblingly brandished to kamikaze all of our genitalia. The assertion of concrete logic, in order to take the piss out of anything obviously hyperbolic or figurative, in order to strand the concept and to imply any language not stripped to its skeleton is hysterical kitsch, jejune, or politically wrong. Is this the goal? To brainwash the youth into thinking you're a rock star, so they'll go blind sucking your cock at the next soup can rally? And good for you if so, but lend me a gland here. I'm not real popular with the ladies, shockingly.
I think it would be its own brand of advantageous centralism to code everything under the guise of art, without the personal conviction of an individual who is either professing kind thoughts without backing them up behaviorally, or who is proclaiming something obscured behind the violent slant of how a phrase obscures behind another similar venom which can take root, if that phrase will do, as arbitrarily as you seem to think I have. There were a million words employed to explicate my pretty simply stated intentions, and the simpler I state them, the more this explication flatters me in its mass obfuscation, of which you seem vaguely informed, but I appreciate the blunder of your intention. I kind of wish you would return the favor.
Okay. Well, don't call me centrist. The term for what I am is belowism. One of us is using a haughty affectation to paint, and the other is haughtily striving by being cool. Don't you feel hatred beyond the general dismissive exclusion in the high school-minded lit game? Must everything absolute be reduced to an abstraction via the dry and skeletal satire of a candor so conversely ironic that the estrewal of things as they should be dies gorged on its own grin, this hunger strike of prose memed into a manner the preteens all purchasers become? And weren't you combating this by becoming the Charles Manson of petty theft?
A demonstration of events as they unfold can be a type of amplification if it is portrayed with enough scope, if it goes beyond the temporary improvisation of the poetic turn of phrase and inflates self-destructively or from inflammation due to a bad diet. The visibility of any literary style bores a large percentage of readers.
Did you ask the democracy online to vote you into the O'Hara-esque inclination for joyfully taking part in traffic jams?
Traffic jam?
Do not put my any syllable into air quotes or fold it up on spec, sailing it back to me as the origami of my own lunch meat. Do you use product in your hair? I mean, what are your politics?
Politics are too literary to be of interest. I feel like no form of judgment has been objectively arrived at since evolution kicked in. This show identifies as conservative.
Identifies? No. I do not shut out conservative lines of thought, as do the young, nor do I subscribe to their every measure, though the entertaining of any such notion seems to be automatically labeled with an increasingly authoritarian bent, as both sides of the same coin inflate and are exposed at last. It only took a couple thousand years to flip Aristotle's ratio on its head, a full negative exposure, but all we can do with progress is plateau or push the reset button, unwittingly or not. All right?
I focused on 20 to 50 books by authors I liked and practiced in that arena until I was the best I could be at it. What is your area of concentration?
My area. Quote, I have lost so much more than your common sense of pride could ever take, willingly. Willingly I did that, and would again, for the self-destructive elation of that endeavor, in the name of art, to besmirch your legacy from Descartes to Cowper, the stripped crown of your royal penmanship, your Cenobite sect of hospitality in sheep's clothing.
Are you postmodern?
Only in my love for young cunt. How about you?
I stopped playing games a couple years ago. Sex isn't the main element of one's 30s, so you become functionally better at it.
Let's talk about the conspiracy of oppression versus the actual crime rate and the marketing tools therein.
Conspiracy of oppression.
Jesus, this guy puts on his Sunday best to watch kiddie porn.
Are you afraid of being boring?
I am asking the questions, and I am giving the air quotes. Holster your fingers.
Where should I holster them?
Why am I aroused?
Why are you aroused?
Stop it.
I am remaining still.
Then why have I been gradually switching my orientation about you over the course of this interview, striking out to stop it, like a petulant teen, like how everyone does, chasing after you with their lack, thinking about you non-stop with an ambivalently lustful hatred. We don't just want to be you, but to possess you. Demeanor means a lot to me. I think much of sexuality hinges on it, beyond how beautiful you are. Wait, what? Is this a chemical form of dominance?
It is an existing condition and an aspect of your mental instability.
Am I being gaslit? If I cut off my nose, would the resulting rage involve the fault as mine alone and preclude you from being handed the remains?
Everything is gaslighting now. We are a culture who places its own context inside air quotes. I put myself on mute throughout the dissection. You are angry about women because you are kind of one yourself. Your insides are functional and are often proclaimed.
Look, I know you're out of my league, but have you considered how well an underling can worship under such conditions?
I try not to consider those who squirt beneath me. Hey, beautiful. Hey. Wake up, sleepyhead. If you strike me with your kiss, I'll lift you taller than your base. Wake up time.
Morning, sweetie.
Morning.
We don't have to say I love you all the time. Shucks, I know I'm afraid to say it. Wears out fast, doesn't it?
I guess.
You're one cold-ass pimp. I suppose that's why I conscripted mine to your cause. Did you sleep well?
7 hours uninterrupted.
I watched you a bit before drifting off myself. I like when you groan fuck me. It implies I am in charge in an informally friendlier way. You're in charge, of course.
I don't care who's in charge.
Yeah, whatever keeps you letting me touch you the cutie. I had a nightmare. I was running into people's houses with a jousting lance, home invading the neighbors, smashing their doors apart, very realistic as it took several attempts, ripping them out of their beds, dicing their bodies around like rag dolls drenched heavy in soup, smashing them into sections of crooked meat caught up into the drapes by the raining gore. I think it's 'cause my first girlfriend made me take her to that movie A Knight's Tale 4 times in the theater, then fell asleep while I fingered her flappy labia, stirring them to and fro like rudders through the piss. She was 5'9" and could fit a cantaloupe in her anus. Big Harry Potter fan, plain prose seems to fit a fable. JK, I'm so lucky you like me. Your passive demeanor, even with its inverse effects, Makes you a high-value target in the Midwest where people vomit corn while they chastise you about their bones being too big, you know? The gals here like to lift lumber. They basically call you a faggot if you don't rape them with a 2x4. Men hate women because the crimes we commit against them flatter them, but here we are eloped on a higher plane of putty in my prostate. Would you care for breakfast in bed, sweetie? I don't know. Breakfast in bed has become a sort of passive-aggressive insistence for you to extend your obsession with me into a barter method. What? How so? It's a manipulative kindness to replace your fear of losing me with high-fiber intake. Are you constantly re-emphasizing my problems to me in order to blow them out of proportion in your favor? You are the bitch here, and here's why. Don't devalue the splintered urethral defecation remainder that helps us share each other's dreams like the lady in the movie Species, please. Movies are an immoral channeling of funds away from those in poverty to promote sexually deviant behavior. We discussed this. You fucking slut. Beauty pones its every fan. Well, darling, maybe you'll grow out of your community-approved talentlessness. You're blame-gamed into a standing and hammer together something scary for once as your toy concerns age out and finally play out of bounds all the way in the cheap seats of hell where my applause awaits you. They will only ever let you think you killed your captor, you baying, oinking, net-wide aptitude. Maybe keep sucking your thumb to the cats lick you barren. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Oh, go skin your knee for a kickback, victim for hire. False charges aren't foreplay, gone girl. Your lack of power in this relationship has turned you from desperate into dangerous. I suspect, in your case, I am just a very willing beneficiary of the elaborate onanism that empowers all feminine sexuality, a masturbation go-between, as you see yourself softer through my want, and grind on whatever remainder the situation provides for your vague, hormone-propulsive conceitedness. Every time the noise of traffic annoys me, scratch that drives me rather batty in its incessantly dull imposition, I don't walk into its midst and complain about the screeching, let alone file a fucking attempted homicide charge against the drivers. Cry on the news and your pain is no longer your property. Cry online and you and I and it are irrelevant. And let me tell you this, girl, whichever one of us is the girl, let me tell you this, okay? Cry wolf in hell. And everyone comes running to kill sheep and wolf alike, and the lesson is blood tastes good on any paw. And yet, don't you feel we're meant to be despite your shitty attitude and that you never really cared? This detachment mechanism you got going on here. We shared a moment or two, right? You have the ability to make a moment matter. That's why language by itself dries up. It's only full the way a used condom in the street can be full. Oh, to be a series of moles sprinkled on your shoulder blade. I brag of my surroundings and promenade their melanoma vestments for Tinky Town. Let me peer into your lemonade. No thanks. I see that we are the marionettes below our sewer, head over heels in the scream, lifting from bowel to bowl and back again. Every corner of the blueprint folds as we advance, swelling as we swallow another profile on the pile, a vote or two for confidence, maggots on picnic. I'm just saying, we fight because we fuck well. You got the appeal carried beyond a hot model into an iconic actress of sensual lore. You're Florence Pugh, Aubrey Plaza, Beatrice Dahl, Maria de Medeiros, mind-bogglers, one and all. I clocked my cock in once. What a malicious boss she turned out to be. Let her remain in such a state of fear years later that piss curls round her thigh and down the side of every new toilet she patronizes. We can avoid a repeat of that, right?
for your Coles indulgences, I block you from the world.
Well, thanks, and what world? Ah, where you going? Come on, baby. Don't try to earn how far I can bend you over. Are we not above this corporate catering so weak-willed about ruling us? Hasn't the anesthetized testimony from a hysterical contingent unhinged our fringe enough? Isn't it less cruel to put a sheep to sleep directly rather than pretend and drag it out like the cancer you can't bleat, the disease of watching you sleep? I love you in a way that will outlast the panic of your loss, that will resurrect you from what I do to you, for dipping out in the first place, for never having been there at all and letting me come inside your ghost. I will create that ghost curve by curve and fuck it better than you can participate, even if you were trying. Not that you can try! Will this tragic couple ever reunite? Will they make their masks bubble outside the flames of hell? What shall happen to their trans babies? Must they be left to breastfeed themselves? Or do we gotta snip way past the umbilical cord till everyone retreats? Find out next time when the never gets too clever on the bottom rung of cum. Good night.
The following recording is from a class of mine a few years back, featuring special guest lecturer T. Plank Struthers. Charges were not and will not be pressed, and my assailant remains unsubpoenaed, that is, concerning this specific incident. Please endure the subpar sound quality as one vaguely endures my every content at large. 8 1/4 large, not in centimeters neither. Wait your goddamn turn. I'm realer in my reel than every pose you take, Bubba. My turn to stab the play button, not to insist it's more dangerous than any other incision, but to tell you to fuck yourself every way possible, and every medium possible. Thank you.
Finally, that is to say, as far as this stage of it is concerned, we saw how the two great kinds of rhythmical arrangement, the balanced rhetorical antiphony on the one hand and the long, swelling, complex symphony on the other, were almost pitted against each other by Lyly and Hooker. In the first of these writers we have, beyond all possibility of question, a deliberate attempt to make rhythm, as well as other constituents of style. In the second, with however much or however little deliberation we have, equally beyond question, the actual attainment of a style preeminently finished in rhythm. There is indeed a kind of cross-antithesis between these two remarkable writers, Hooker being plain and quiet in respect of diction, grammatical arrangement, rhetorical trick and ornament, to such a pitch that, as we observed, some well-meaning persons have held that he approaches the poor and the beggarly, while Lyly, going to the ends of the earth for his vocabulary and twisting his style into all sorts of figures, so contents himself with the easiest and most rudimentary kind of rhythm that other equally well-meaning persons have scouted the classing of him as ornate. And going on about Johnson and the problems of the plane here, he says, and then we come to the three titans who set themselves, it is difficult not to think in all cases deliberately, to the business of raising it for good, and who in a very certain sense succeed, their efforts in each case being very mainly, if not in by far the greatest path, rhythmical. There is Johnson who, without in his most characteristic style and the regular Johnsonese going much beyond balance and antithesis, for instruments varies in form and application of these instruments almost prodigialiter, arranges his contrasts and correspondences in intricate mosaics of triple and quadruple parallel group effects, compels attention to the whole composition of these mosaics, the neglect of which had been the great fault of the plain style hitherto, by deliberately pitting adjective against adjective, substantive against substantive, verb against verb, and swings the whole in ponderous but not clumsy liberation against the reader's ear and mind at once. Burke takes the Bolingbrokean bladders and fills them as smugglers of old are said to have done, and not with wind but with spirit, with the wind of the spirit if anybody likes, and once more compels by his union of imaginary with sentiment and argument. And excuse me. Ah, man, this Johnson in Mosaic. Hold the sneeze in till you grow some horns, boy. I demand Catullus. Read us some Catullus. Put that flask back in your satchel, partner. We done read Catullus. Back in grade school. Anyway, Saintsbury. Oh, Tage! Oh, big boss man, Mr. Ambassador to my boogers. I got a question for you. Is it which breed of cowboy can ride underneath his horse again? No, but that a stack of books leading to your dick veins, or are the legendary self-plucked roosters they caught in Arkansas given a parole to get in this classroom? Man, don't ply me with more of your Cadbury bunny wrapped in Corinthian belly lint. Cut these nubile fuck ponies some slack. Y'all in your prime. Don't you care to dream away from the tether of a pen? Look at them cum-colored clouds outside the window. It's almost as if, for a single second, we weren't trapped inside a building designed by the goddamn Soviet Union. Hey, kid, let me borrow me over that Sprite bottle over there. I gotta spat my chaw here. Swell, thank you. Now you don't gotta hold it for me, ha. Continue. World premiere scholar of Chuck E. Cheese. Kids, wear your heart on your balls, then the lines just work. Repeat that sentiment with double the tongue for you young ladies. Look at you. Little girl, I'd hand my sweet grandmother a ticket to the Hindenburg for a lingering taste of your ankle meat. Hey, if you're done translating Pink Floyd into fucktard over there, and don't caress another of my students' hairdos, please, raspberry scented and silken threaded as it might be. Man, look at these tongues without ears in them. I mean, you know, what's the domain? That's with a SNE at the end, sweetie. You got dibs on every chick consecrating the slowly bucked wood below her seat here? 'Cause your wife sure ain't owned. She's on loan. Yes, Plank can woo a wife or two, if only he visited the page with such fucking, passion. Since them Haslan days of Snore, let's stick his trophy in the fridge until he figures out what the word sonnet means. Hey, what do you want? All the figurines atop my trophy got stuck playing Tetris with their HPV. This motherfucker got a 5th stage syphilis on rigor mortis side of life. Watch him be all clandestine about scratching the sores off his curriculum. Now, why don't you try stretching a diphthong over your fucking head there? I'll tow you in your bed, take the tuna out instead, and read you Thomas Mallory, 7 inches deep. Oh, the great Bukowski chatterbox is composing again for the first time since 1990 in Beer Fart. Oh man, listen here. Ever heard gunfire turn in a scream legible? Tell you what, how about I jerk off in your tunnel to heaven, bear the light of angels with my viscosity faltering through your tum? Your obituary's gonna be written in morning wood, on a dog turning rank, singing to its hole as it fades. Ah! Who? Am I stabbed here? Well, okay, fair enough, alright. In conclusion, class, may the grade schools and high schools and colleges that for any reason failed to mention to you the names of George St. Barry, Hippolyte Taine, or Henry Swift, may they suffer urinary tract infections forever, because these institutions have intentionally deprived you of your speech. They instead went simple and utilitarian down the plain lineage of Richard Hooker and Hobbes, leading up to this cornpone nitwit and his Swiss Army knife of life experience, missing all the organs, while proclaiming quite the opposite, to his pride. He who has been celebrated quite direly, enough to drink his former skills translucent in my class, no less. Thanks for the guest lecture. Swaddled in content, arrogantly asserting his mulish blacksmithery as if I haven't been stabbed before, just because I like a little complexity to my language. Fuck you, and fuck the company you sweep. Dismissed. Remember, don't bleed in front of anyone but yourselves.
That was then, and this is the end. I only rhyme by accident because I don't see anything to be measured against. Same wreckage beneath my eyelids as they grow progressively enfeebled. I don't study the strains of voice, haven't mastered the inflections therein as they are performed in the moment, though I make an effort where most don't. Apologies. I have borrowed many pseudonyms, including the one on my birth certificate, and rode them into juice. Everyone's name chafes me. Every other name is a plot against my own. Shockingly, I was fired for much less interesting reasons. What came to pass, this failure of every generation to preserve the same meanness that has allowed them to persist. The blame game is an oval, fractal masses and their morals, whichever phraseology, still unbeknownst to me, crossed these pallid lips and lost me, my nuclear suck-a-duck family. Don't forget, family is another old myth. We're so much less than our myths, and most of those are rather grueling. But yes, they let me teach English at a community college in the early swath of this century. Neat. I had a life then, regrettably. Cool to be fired and blackballed every few months because I roll snake eyes for a living. We soiled our goal here, trying to recreate that woolly time when power-mad professors spoke at their students with an oppressively open verve. Mostly agenda-free craft scholars, weary of every ideology. People look at me like I've never shaken someone's hand on a stretcher before. Crabs in a barrel, sibling rivalry. Writers have similar blood. It's just that we sometimes mistake it as flowing through the same body. And we are susceptible to the competing propagandas that keep us from our officially fruitless trade, which we have disguised as fruitful by feigning that it is a trade. What do you think, audience of Zilch, my couple nadas? The question of a true podcaster for art. If I pull the trigger on myself, how will this get posted? Is it obvious I am speaking to an empty room? Well, not entirely empty, because how do you peel back an echo? How to spit down the esophagus of your own echo? If the decaying bodies of one's wife and kids somehow have become ornaments before you in their decimation, does that not change your demographic or their blood type? Will their curdling help you switch crowns? Or will it keep you up at night, their screams, as you remember each in its uniqueness? Granted, the last remaining parent was a mercy kill, gone to that great boomer Woodstock in the sky, but these little buggers squirmed intelligently when I stuffed them back into my nutsack. And a couple of neighbors, too, tried to run after I knocked with intent. Not an athlete here, but a pistol covers great distances, great enough. And I suppose what I mean to say is my concluding interview is with a survivor I just made fuck her own pet. It's okay, though, because I stuck it in the stove for her to turn the body soft. Do you have anything to add before I start whittling? Have any of you scribblers added one thing once to your baby-dicking congregations? Your ever-shrinking 10% bigger than my Johnson niches. Is my hermetic closet drama to the gavel-banged to be constantly gavel-banged by sports fan men who pet cats, huffy adults with laughable professions ecking by, despite every fact proving contra to their necessity? Keep ignoring what you are, those who have reduced a page with their neurotic gardening equipment and standing barren on their travels, on their published talking, their art-free art, hip and popular as a Groucho mask. Are you popping off on your desolation with a snarky snout, cutting lines of kitty litter to snort? I plan to visit you, one and all, as I have many others now in my enlightenment, my true calling. It was always culminating below the bumble of my consonants. Or, to make it easy for you to comprehend, arcing its furry back while purring across my words, and while you sleep, because everyone sleeps except me. There is no vanity in a condition. A friendly hello will do. Kiss all your integers on their route for me as you pass, you cunts.